selection dilemmas that Gareth Southgate has after what happened in that Wales game. He made a number of changes. Marcus Rashford was pretty impressive, as was Phil Foden, has to be said. What would you be thinking? What should Gareth Southgate be thinking, and what will he be doing? Will he make much of a change from that Wales team?
Yeah, I think a lot of players staked a claim for a starting spot from that Wales game. I think definitely they showed the quality in the group, but going into this game, Gareth Southgate will need to be looking and understanding, where are Senegal's weaknesses and how do we obviously, combat that, make sure we're solid again. You don't want to concede early goals in any tournament knockout stage. But I think what really impressed me with England in the game against Wales was, their dynamic approach on the wings, and they had, Rashford, who is more direct and was able to threaten him behind, particularly into the second half when they began to, turn Wales and play clever balls in behind and get the Welsh defence running towards their own goal. No defenders like doing that. But then they had, the technique and the skill of Foden in off the line as well, and he was obviously, beginning to unlock the Welsh defence. So I think what I saw in terms of England that maybe I didn't see early on in the tournament is that with that sort of setup, they were a little bit more dynamic in the sense they could do both things on the pitch. So they could go in behind and they could also link the play. And what they also did from the first half into the second half was they actually switched the two. So having a left-footed player and a right-footed player on either flank actually benefited them because they switched Rashford and played Rashford on the right in the second half and obviously played Foden on the left. And that's where their goals came from. So I think it's going to be a really interesting decision from Gareth, because we know he's been loyal with players in the past. So does he start the likes of Sterling ahead of a Rashford, ahead of a Foden, or does he play Saka, who was electric in that first game? But I think for me, both Foden and Rashford have really, really staked a claim to be starting tomorrow night.
See, it's interesting there what Hal's talking about, because the first game would have been your starting lineup. Your first game, which was Iran, they won 6-2. It was going to be Saka and obviously Sterling on the left. Now, the indifferent performance against the USA, which wasn't particularly good, but it also allowed, because it was a draw and England had such a big goal difference, it allowed Gareth to have a look, didn't he, which he chose to do. He made changes to his starting lineup and played against Wales with a very strong outfit. Not very good in the first half, but like you said, the switch happened, then everything happened in the second half. So it's given Gareth a real problem, but initially his first 11 was the first game, in my mind. It's whether he's been persuaded to go, like you said, look at Senegal and make changes. And are this personnel better than them for this particular game?
And Senegal, they play with an intensity and they're very physical, and so I think whether Gareth reverts back to a Rashford and a Saka where, they're not physical players, and this is what I mean by having that sort of dynamic approach. I think Rashford offers a little bit more physicality in that final third. So it's going to be an important one, because if Wales, if England do not start well, as they didn't necessarily start well against Wales, I think Senegal are going to pose more of a threat in that final third, whereas Wales actually didn't do that at all. So yeah, it's an important one, and obviously other key decisions in terms of centre midfield, who plays off Kane, but it's going to be a massive.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because Saka gets a brace in the first game, Raheem Sterling gets a goal as well, and a terrific goal. So it may, in one game in a World Cup, you can have quite a bit of change after the USA draw. So it's making Gareth really think differently about this knockout game, which is another obstacle they've got to overcome. It's so tricky. This is where Gareth's really going to earn his crust, because going into this game, you can't make mistakes on who was the right personnel. You've got to get that right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in terms of that midfield, Jude Bellingham, I think he is, nailed on starter.
Would you see a three in midfield? Would you see Jordan Henderson with Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham? Do you think that might happen?
I think maybe against the better teams in the tournament. So if they get past Senegal and they play France, we might see that, because then there's a little bit more security in that midfield, and again, Henderson or Rice would be able to cover in terms of that Mbappe threat, because if they do come up against France, obviously we're not talking about France yet, but you need to double up on him. You know, I watched Mbappe twice in this tournament live, and he is electric. So yeah, I think that can potentially come. But in this game, I think they need to control the game and be on the front foot. So, you know, Jude Bellingham, a Declan Rice, and then, you know, I think the question and the query is, does he go with
Mason Mount,
or does he, you know, as he said, does he pull Foden inside? Like me personally, I would be playing Foden off the striker, because any player who looks at another player and sees that level of technical ability, you're just like, get him on the ball in areas where he can hurt the opposition.
And yet he doesn't seem to want to do that, Gareth Southgate.
No.
He doesn't see him in that
I don't
position,
think he'll do that.
does he? No.
I think I get that real feeling that he loves what Mason Mount does, as in because he's so tenacious and changing.
Does?
Does I say do's? I'm tired now.
I'm sorry.
I've been up since last Thursday. But no, I think he loves what Mason does with being a tenacious player, closing down. And look, Phil Foden's a player that you just look at and think he could play anywhere. I personally think. I don't agree with Gareth that he couldn't play the 10. He clearly could.
Yeah. But they need players who are going to set the tournament alight. And I think, you know, Mount can do that. He's done that for Chelsea. He's scored big goals in big games for Chelsea as well, and has done well in an England shirt. But I think just Foden is, when you look at those players at, you know, the likes of France, the likes of Brazil, you know, the Neymars, the Mbappes, like, Foden is the closest thing that England have to that level and calibre of player. So you need to get him on the pitch and you need to give him game time.
So if you were having Foden then in that number 10 role, are you saying it's Rashford for you as you're on the left-hand side? Or? Yeah,
I would definitely be starting with Rashford, and I'd probably start with Saka as well. You know, and I think that is, Senegal would be very, very nervous against that, you know, front four line. And again, you're going to play Harry Kane. I don't think, you know, England would. I don't think Gareth is going to make any changes there, even though he's obviously not scored in this tournament. I don't think he scored in his last, is it 6 in a World Cup? I'm not sure. There's a stat out there where he obviously hasn't been as prolific in international tournaments as he has been at club level previously. So, but he leads the line well. He's got 3 assists in 3 games in this tournament, as you know. So that's not to be forgotten. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very exciting game, because Senegal are a very physical team and will play with an intensity and can hurt England.